using your gel plate, when you start using your gel plate, you remove the acetate sheets and then you don't use them anymore. You can use them to cut out a mask or a stencil or whatever you want to do with it, but you will not be using it anymore to store your plate, because if you put an acetate sheet on the plate, you will never get it on as tight as it is when you buy the plate, and so there will be air bubbles between the acetate sheet and the plate, and the pressure of the air when you store your plate will create dents in in your plate, and the dents will show up in your prints. So you want to avoid that. So the best way to store your plate is to put a sheet of copier paper on both sides of the plate. Make sure that your paper does not wrinkle, because wrinkles in your paper will also create texture in your plate, and that will show up in your prints. If for some reason it happens to you that you do get dents or texture in your plate, you can put your gel plate on a very smooth surface, a non-porous surface, such as a glass plate or something. Make sure that there are no air bubbles and leave it there for about like 24 hours. And most of the time, the dents will then come out again. Of course, if you have like real deep dents because you put something heavy on it or something, then they will never come out again. So you have to be a little bit careful with your plate when you store it. So as I said, copier paper on both sides and then put it back in the original packaging, but without the acetate sheets. So that's how you store them. And as I said, they come like this, very clear. They will never look like that again once you start using them, and that's okay, because if you start using them, they start looking a bit like cloudy, like this. And the more you use it, the better it will work. So when you just open your case, then the mineral oil that is in the plate will be kind of on the surface, and it might even cause your paints to bead up. So the first couple of prints might not be the most perfect prints when you start printing. What you can do is clean your plate with baby oil, and it makes the plate more, I think the word is slick, so it is not as um, um, slippery anymore. I think that's the right word, right? So, and that takes away the top layer of mineral oil and makes it more cloudy, but that actually means that your plate will work better. And then in time, depending on the materials, the products that you work with on your plate might get stained a little bit more, like this one. This one has been used a lot, also with products that have a lot of pigments, and the pigments will stain the plate, and it can be even worse than that, especially yellow pigments are staining the plate a lot. That doesn't mean that it affects the how the plate works. So stains in the plate will not affect your prints, will not affect how well your plate works. So you don't have to worry about that. The only thing that I can advise is if you want to work also with alcohol inks, for instance, alcohol inks are stain a lot, then I would suggest that you have one plate especially for alcohol inks, because that looks really messy, and then you can't really see what the colors are that you put on your plate. So that might be a good idea to do. So what else do you need? You need your gel plate, and then the first important thing you need is a brayer. And I have a couple of different brayers here. So I have, for instance, of course, the Gelli Arts, the brayer, which is a hard rubber brayer. and I have the Speedball Brayer, which is a soft rubber brayer. And which one you want to use is very personal. They both work. It's just a little bit of a different feel, and so it depends on your personal preference which one of these two you want to use. And then I also have like a white lino roller for people who do lino cutting. These rollers, I really like that they are so white, because then you can use them if you want to blend colors. So if you have several colors underneath each other with the wider brayer, it's easy to blend them without having to clean your brayer in between. So this can especially be very helpful if you print on larger plates. So then we get to the products to work with, and I recommend that if you start gel printing and you're new to gel printing, that you start with acrylic paint. You can use a lot of different products on the plate, and I have tried almost everything that is out there on the plate, and most of the products work, but in the end, acrylic paint is my favorite product to use on the plate, and the plate was actually designed to use with acrylic paint in the first place. Let me see. I have a variety of brands here that I use on the plate. Let me see. What else do I have? So I have Amsterdam, Talens Amsterdam, Liquitex. I have Winsor&Newton. I have Golden. And then I have a variety of craft paints also available at Michael's. And I can say all of the paints work. So it doesn't really matter which acrylic paint you use, they all work. There is just a difference in the quality sometimes. So if you use a little bit more expensive paints that have more pigments, then of course your prints will be more vibrant and more have deeper colors than when you use, for instance, very cheap craft paints. But you definitely don't need the most expensive paints. You don't have to use golden paints. I have only a couple of tubes of golden paint, and I use them only for specific techniques where I want very detailed and very perfect prints. So then I might use golden, but in general, I prefer the student quality paints of the more higher brands. So for instance, the Liquitex and the Amsterdam, I don't use the professional paints, but I use the standard or the student paints mostly, because a lot of times my prints are basically going to be collage material, and I don't want to use my most expensive paints for collage material. So if you want to start gel printing and you don't want to spend too much money on it, because the plate itself already is not the cheapest art tool that is out there, but you want to try it, then you can probably just get perfectly started with whatever you have on hand. But in the long end, it might be a good idea to invest in a little bit more professional paint than the really craft paints. And also for the more professional paint, you need less paint. So in the end, it's not really that more expensive than using craft paints. And also, if the outcome is not satisfying, then then it's a waste of money actually using the cheaper paints, right? Okay, so that's for the paints. Then you can use all kinds of other materials on the plate, like alcohol inks, which I already mentioned. You can use pen pastel. You can use even watercolor. You can also use paint markers. Some people even use oil paint on the plate, which I don't really like because it's very messy, because oil paint is not going to dry. So it's going to be really messy to clean everything. Stamping inks, you can also use stamping inks on the plate. Some people only use stamping inks, which gives a more, how shall I say it, a more soft look than acrylic paint. But as I said, acrylic paint is the easiest one to use, and also my personal favorite. So I'm going to show you how you can create texture on the plate. And I'm going to use products or tools, whatever you want to call them, that you can find in and around the house, also to show you that you don't have to invest in a lot of expensive tools if you want to start gel printing. So of course you can use stencils and masks, and you can use specially designed art printing plates and stuff like that, but you can also just use whatever you can find. And that's what I'm going to show you today. So I'm going to show you how you can build up a couple of layers to get to a final print. And I'm going to show you how you can create texture in those layers. So let's just start by creating a couple of backgrounds that I can then print on several layers. So let me get some paper. So about the paper, I'm going to print today, and I'm going to use my smaller plate. And I'm going to print today on this a little bit heavier card, which is from the Recollections collection from Michaels, and it's available in a variety of sizes and also in a variety of colors, but I print mostly on a white background, and I do that especially because the white background will make sure that my colors appear on the print as they are. So if I would, for instance, use a bit of translucent color on a different colored background, then the color would change, because you would see the color of the paper shining through the layer of paint. So I like to start on white paper. Besides card, you can also just print on just regular copier paper, like thin copier paper, which is really nice if you want to use it as collage material. Even better for collage material is tissue paper. So like the really thin silk or tissue paper. So you can buy this. You can buy this in large sheets and in packs at Michael's, but a lot of times you also will find this in like a shoebox, or your clothes could be wrapped in it if you order something online and you get it delivered at home or something. Then you will find also tissue paper in there that is perfect to use on the gel plate. Of course, you could also print on something that has already something on it, like for instance, book paper, and the text will shine through the paint and will add extra texture and interest to your prints. If you like that, you can also use, for instance, music paper, really fun to use in a background. And so you can basically print on any paper. The only paper that you should not use on your gel plate is glossy photo paper, because glossy photo paper has a coating, and the coating sticks to the plate. So if you use glossy photo paper on the gel plate and it sticks to the plate, then you will not be able to get it off anymore, and that is basically ruining your gel plate. And I think I'm working for Gelli Arts now, with Gelli Arts for over 10 years. And this is the only thing I found that actually ruined a plate. So whatever product you put on there, it will always come off. The plate is made to, designed to release whatever you put on it, but photo paper is not one of them. So let's do some printing. Let me show you how very simple tools can create really fun prints that can be used for a variety of projects. And I'm going to start. You can do this two ways around. You can either build up the layers on the plate, which means that you wait for each layer to dry in between and then add the next layer, and depending on how many layers you want, and then add a final layer, like a pickup layer, and then pull everything in one go from the plate. Or you can print layer after layer after layer on the paper. So this first one that I'm going to do, I think it's smart if I start with the easiest one, which is printing on the paper layer after layer. So I'm just going to use my brayer to roll out my paint, and I have also on the side always a little stack of copier paper, which is my clean off paper. I use the paper to roll off my brayer in between layers, and also if there's too much paint on my plate, because you only need a very thin layer of paint. And I'm actually going to secure my plate. So as you can see, I have my plate on a white sheet of paper. I always put a white sheet of paper under my plate because of the same as I said with the paper that I print on. This is going to give me the best idea of the actual color of the paint. If I would put my plate on a darker background like this, then my colors might actually look different than they really are. So I'm always going to put my plate on a sheet of paper. It will not move on the paper, but the paper itself might move on my table when I roll out my paint, and that's why I secure it with some masking tape. Okay, I'm just going to roll out my paint, and I'm going to make sure that it is a really nice and thin layer. And if there's too much paint on the plate, I just roll off my excess paint on my scrap paper, then go over my paint again with my brayer, and it will be picking up some of the paint again, which makes the layer thinner. Now I'm going to place my paper on top of the plate and rub it. So if you use too much paint, if your layers of paint are too thick, two things will happen. First of all, your print will not be nice and smooth. You will get some kind of paint texture in your prints. And well, if you like that, then of course, that's up to you. But I like it when my layers are nice and smooth. And the second thing that will happen is that there's a lot of paint staying behind on the plate, which means that if you create texture in that layer, you will not be able to take away enough paint to create really open areas, and your prints will not look really nice. So it's best to just work always with really thin layers. So as you can see, I have a really smooth, thin layer of paint on my paper. And here you see little bits of the leftovers that were still on my plate because I didn't clean it properly, because I like it when this happens. So now I can add a second layer to this first layer. And because this is quite a dark layer, I need some paint that is actually opaque, because otherwise the blue, for instance, if I would use a yellow now, most yellows are translucent, then it would not show up as yellow on the blue, it would show up as green, or it would kind of disappear in the background. So I'm going to use a paint that is opaque. How do you know if your paint is opaque? If you use the more professional brands, then there is a sign on the tube that says whether or not your paint is opaque. So this one has a black square, and this one here, the golden one, also has a black square. And let me see if I also have one, the Liquitex one with, where is it? Oh, so here is it. It's very small, but here there's also a tiny black square, which means that the paint is opaque. Sometimes the square is open or it's half full. So let me find one of those. So here is one that is half black, half white, which means that it is semi-translucent. And then you also have paints like, for instance, this one. Oh, that one is gone because it's used so much, but there was a white square on this one, and which means that it is like a very translucent paint. So I usually don't really look at my paints to see if they are translucent or not. I just go with the flow, and whatever comes out, I'm happy with. But now I want to show you the how the layers are built up. I'm going to have a look at it and see. This is a opaque paint, so I can use that on the blue. So I'm just going to roll out another layer of paint, and I have rolled off my brayer on my scrap paper, which means that there is no wet paint anymore on the brayer, and I can just use it again on my plate without changing the color, without mixing it with the color I used before. So it's really important that you always clean off your brayer in between layers, because otherwise, if I had not done that and went straight to the pink paint, then it would just mix with the blue that I used in the previous layer. So if you don't mind that, then you can just go on, but also to have not too much paint built up on your brayer, it's a good idea to clean it in between colors. So I'm again going to roll out a thin layer of paint, and I'm going to use something very simple. I'm going to use a piece of tissue paper, just wrinkled together. And I'm going to use that to stamp into my wet paint, creating a texture. So basically, I'm taking away paint from the plate with my tissue paper, which is then creating a texture in the paint. And I'm sure you can imagine that if I would have a really thick layer of paint here, that I would not be able to pick up enough paint to create those open areas which make the texture. So I can't say it enough, work in thin layers, because then you get the best result. And then, of course, again, I am going to rub very well and lift up the paper. And here I have my first texture, which is a very organic texture, and it's very, very easy to create. So now I could continue and add yet another layer to this layer if I want to. I could also work with masks on my, I can actually, let me do that. Let me just show you how you can work with a mask. If you already have a textured background and you want to create shapes, for instance, in there, then you can use a mask. You can cut it yourself. Let's just cut something simple. For instance, like, let's cut a heart. So I'm just going to cut a simple heart just to show you how to do it. So here I have a heart, and if I want this texture to be in the heart and I want to cover up the rest of my print, then I can put this between the paint and my paper. So I'm actually going to do that using my Easy Dots. These are repositionable Easy Dots from Scrapbook Adhesive. This is a repositionable adhesive, and it's perfect if you want to use mask, because you can just add a tiny little bit to it, and then you can place your mask exactly where you want it on your background, instead of just hoping that it's going to be in the right place on your plate. You can put it on your background, and then you can, when you put the paper down, it will be in the right position. So now let's pick another color. I'm going to use an opaque one again, because I want to cover up the surrounding of the heart. And I'm not sure if this is going to be the most beautiful color combination that I could think of, but it's more to show you the process. So of course you can use more than one color at the same time on the plate. So you can mix colors and make it less, how do you say that? Plain? I think that's it. So it's more of a blending the colors. I don't want to completely mix it, because that would just make one new color instead of getting that variety of colors in there. So I actually used a little bit too much paint here, because I decided last minute that I wanted an extra color. And you really don't need that much paint. So now I'm going to put this on the plate again.
Birgit, we had a question. Can you do calligraphy? I don't think I'm saying it right. On a thoroughly dry finish print?
Can you do
calligraphy?
Oh, I'm not sure what that is.
Like writing, fine writing with a pen, the really pretty lettering.
Oh, on a dry plate. So if there is paint on the plate and then right into the paint, is that what you mean?
On just a already finished print, it sounds like.
Oh, on an already finished print, of course. Yeah, of course, because if you do it the right way and work with thin layers, then you have a really smooth surface where you can work on, and you can do whatever you want on top of that. But you can actually also write in the wet paint on your plate, of course, but then you have to do it backwards, because when you make a print, everything gets reversed. So that's the fun thing too. If you think you can use your stamps on your plate, yes, you can use your stamps on your plate, like for instance, your rubber stamps. But when they have writing, then you cannot use them on your plate, because if you have stamps, the text is actually reversed, because then when you print it, stamp it, it goes the right way around. But then when you print it and you take it up from the plate, it gets reversed again, and then you will have your text backwards. So if you are making your own stamps, for instance, for gel printing, then the text has to be actually in the way you also would write it, because it's reversed 2 times. I hope that makes sense. Okay, here we go. So now I covered up my surrounding area, and my my mask prevented this part of my print to get any paint on it. And of course, this is a very simple thing, but you can probably imagine that you can make this very intricate and can make many layers on top of each other using a variety of masks, and build up a complete piece of art using masks and several layers of paint. Now I can just remove the paper from my plate, and that also has now a really nice color. Who knows, maybe you can use that for something else, for another project. There's a tiny little outline here on my plate left behind. I don't even think you can see it. Now you can see it, a tiny little outline. And that will show up in my next print. If I am going to make a print that I don't want that to show up, then of course I have to clean my plate before I can move on to my next print, but I don't care. I'm just going to go with whatever I have. And I'm now going to do a print where I build up layers on the plate instead of printing several times on the paper. And for that, I'm going to start with a little bit lighter color. And I'm going to use 2 colors. So let me mix this with a little bit of a bright olive green. And I'm just going to roll that out. And where I left my first layer, like a completely covered layer of paint in my first layer, because I'm now going to build up layers on the plate, I have to make open areas in my first layer, because otherwise the second layer would not show. Because if you, I will first create the texture and then I will explain why. So let me create texture with something simple like an egg carton. And I've used it before, as you can see. Funny thing is that there are different types of egg cartons. So once you start doing this, you will go and look at the bottom of all the eggs that you buy from now on, because then, of course, you want to collect all the different ones, because they all give different textures. I'm just going to very randomly print in here. So I create a lot of open areas in my print. So now this has to dry before I can add the second layer. And while this layer is drying, I'm going to explain why it is important that if you do several layers on the plate, that you start with the first layer with the biggest open parts, and then the second layer you can also do smaller open parts, and then that way you move on until the last layer, because it is kind of like when you have a stack of paper. Let me just use some of my paint roll of papers here. So if I put my first layer on the plate, And then I put my second layer on top, and then maybe even a third or fourth layer. The moment I pull my paper from the plate, I'm going to turn everything over, and the first sheet is on top. And that's the same with the paint. So the first layer of paint is the top layer of your print. If your first layer would be a solid layer of paint, you would not see the second layer. You would also not see the third layer. I hope that makes sense. So if that's hard to work like that, then I suggest that you do it the way I showed in the first print, like this one. Just build up layers on the paper, and then the more open parts there are in the next layer, the more you will see of the layers that came before. But if you want to do it like this, then you have to think the other way around. And also this layer needs to dry before I can add another layer. Because if I would add the second layer straight away, while the paint is still wet, I would just mix the wet paint with the next layer, and that would mean that I just would mix the colors and I would totally lose the pattern. So that's why it's important that this layer is completely dry. And
Birgit, we have 2
yeah,
questions. Judy's wondering, what's the best way to clean your brayer? And then we also have a question from Susan. She's wondering, could you use a dryer if you wanted to dry the paint?
well, first question about the brayer is cleaning the brayer is after a session or maybe 2 or 3 sessions. It depends on how much paint has built up on your brayer, how well you have cleaned it in between the layers. You can take it apart like this. And as you can see, I never clean this. I don't care. I like all the color that's on there. And but if you don't like that, then you can clean this too. But I usually only clean this part, and I toss it in a bucket with water. And what we have here in the Netherlands is a washing detergent with enzymes. I don't know if you have that in the US, but you have something that's called Murphy's oil soap. And if you put that in the water together with your brayer, and that also works actually for your stencils and masks, then and you leave it in there overnight, then the next day you can just rinse it in water, clean water, and your brayer will be completely clean again. So that's how I clean my brayer. And then the second question was,
If you could use like a small hand dryer or something like that to dry the paint
oh,
faster.
yeah, so you cannot use any heat on the gel plate. It would melt if you use like real heat on the gel plate. But if you really need to speed up the drying time a little bit, you can use a hair dryer on cold setting. But you have to make sure that it's cold. So it's basically just the air that can dry the paint, but it should not be any heat. Okay, and of course, how fast your paint dries totally depends on the circumstances in your room. So, and also on the paint that you're using, because if you use, for instance, golden open paints, then it will take a long time to dry. And I would not recommend golden open paints for techniques like this, because then you are waiting all the time for your paint to dry. And some paints dry really fast, and so that depends on the brand, and also it depends on how warm it is in your room, what the humidity is in your room. So you have to find out and experiment with that to see how much drying time it needs. And if you are somewhere where it's like really hot, I don't know, for instance, I guess Texas is really hot. I don't know, but I think so. And dry, maybe, or maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, if your paint is like drying really fast, then you can add something to your paint as a slow dry medium. So I have here a slow dry blending medium from Liquitex. I think they are available from other brands too. And what you do is you mix this with your paint, and then your paint takes longer to dry. So if your paint is drying too fast for the technique that you want to do, then you can add a little bit of this. What I do when I use this, I add a few drops on my plate. I roll it out, then I add my paint and roll out my paint. And while I'm rolling out my paint, it is mixing with the slow dry medium on the plate. This means that I never use too much. I don't mix it in a separate cup, so I have no leftover paint, and I only need what I really need. So this one is dry, and I'm going to add the next layer. And I could add several layers this way, but I'm just going to show one layer and how you pick up dried paint from the plate, because I also want to show you some finished prints and things that you can do with your prints. So, and the time is going really fast, I see. So I'm just going to use a white paint. And this could be any color. I'm just using a white paint because my colors are quite light that I used in my first layer, and I want the texture to show. So again, now I'm going to place my paper on top while my paint is still wet. And that's really important. Your paint has to be still completely wet, because if your paint starts to dry, you will not be able to pick it up from the plate. You can not lift up dry paint from the plate unless you have a wet layer to pick it up. So you can pull the print straight away. But that only works well if you use the exact right amount of paint, so a really thin layer. Because if you use a really thick layer or a too thick layer of paint, then your paper will only be able to pick up the top layer of the paint, and it will not also pick up that dry layer that's underneath. So if you are worried that your paint is maybe not thin enough, what you can do is leave the paper on the plate until everything is dry. Because what happens is all these layers of paint and the paper stick together once they are dry. And the plate is made to release the paint. So when you lift up the paper, all of these layers stuck together will come off with the paper, and none of the paint will stay behind on the plate. But I'm not going to wait until everything is dry. I'm just going to guess that my amount of paint is right. And it is. So everything is coming off. And here is my egg carton texture. And as you can see, it also pulled up this little heart outline that I just showed you that was left behind after making the first print. So I'm going to show you a couple of things I made with the gel plate, so you have an idea what kind of things you all can do with the gel prints, because that's a question I get a lot. What do you do with all of your prints? So there's a lot of things that you can do with your prints, and while I'm going to show you my prints, I can also tell a little bit more about maybe some techniques that I used in there. So I'm first going to show you just some prints that I have not really done anything with. So what I really like to do is print with leftover die cuts. So what the kind of the masking technique that I did before with the heart, you can also do that with any die cutting left over. So here I have been die cutting letters and numbers, and then the leftover pieces I used to create a texture in this print. I also really like to use crochet pieces, like really old crochet pieces that I find at thrift stores. Most of them are, when I find them, they are too dirty to touch, but then I just wash them and then I use them as printing material. So what I basically do is I roll out a layer of pink. Here I used pink and purple paint. I place my crochet piece on top, put it down, take it off, then the texture will be left behind on the plate. And then I do exactly what I did in this second print here. I leave the crochet pattern to dry, and then I use a second layer to pull up that print. And it looks really difficult. It looks as if this is a really difficult print, but it basically is just 2 layers and it's a really easy print. And I don't know if you are already following me on Instagram or if you are following Gelli Arts on Instagram, but there are a lot of reels on Instagram, also quite a lot made by me, showing the process of making prints like this. So these are little videos that are showing just one print and how it's made. So if you are interested in that, you can follow us. My Instagram name is at the left bottom of the screen, and at Gelli Arts is also on Instagram. So this is also crochet, another one with crochet. And as you can see, you can work in any color combination that you can even think of. This is also a crochet print. As you can see, I'm really into the crochet prints at the moment. I really love them. Here I made one with bubble wrap. So this is the first layer of this print was the purple. And then I pushed the bubble wrap into the purple paint and lifted up, and then I had that pattern. I left the purple to dry and then used white paint and the, how do you call it, teal paint for the pickup layer, and that is showing in the open areas of the bubble wrap texture. Here I used some flowers to print with. So same story, it was just a solid layer of a dark green paint. I used a flower to create the texture in there. So I basically just stamped with the flower, which took away the paint. And then I used different colors to pick up that layer. Another flower print. Here I have been printing with botanicals, leaves, anything. You can just go outside, find botanicals and leaves and create beautiful prints. You really don't have to go out and buy a lot of stuff. Sorry. Sorry about that. This print was made with a relief that I created with paper towel tubes. And there's actually a video about that on the Gelli Arts YouTube channel if you are interested. And then I colored in the open areas with a paint marker. This is also a leaf print that I worked on afterwards with paint markers. So I wanted to show you this to show you that your print, your gel print does not have to be the final product. It doesn't have to be the end result. You can use it as a base for a piece of art, and you can use all kinds of techniques, mixed media techniques, paint markers, crayons, pencils, whatever products you can think of on top of your gel print and create art. It's just like the background, it's just the base of your project. Of course, you can also use gel printing for card making. So here I have a couple of cards that where the background is a gel print. So the blue, red, pink background is a gel print, but all the hearts are also cut out from a variety of gel prints. So they are just die cuts, and I just glued them. I don't know if you can see it, but I just glued them on top of that solid layer print. And of course, you can also do that with circles or whatever die cut you can think of, or whatever you cut out by hand, and create cards this way. You can use your gel prints to create covers for little notebooks or sketch books or whatever you want to use them for. Or maybe you want to create bookmarks. Then that is also something that you could do with your gel prints. You can use it as collage material and then create whatever you want from these pieces. So this little bird was made out of, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different gel prints. So if you have a big stash of gel prints in a variety of colors, then you can use those to for collage. I have a couple more here. So these birds are little collage birds, and the backgrounds, of course, is also a gel print. So there's also on the Gelli Arts YouTube channel a video showing how to make these cards with the little birds and the backgrounds. You can turn your prints into little journals, little books, little art journals. If you have a variety of gel prints and you combine them with, for instance, book paper or anything that you, here's like an envelope that I've been drawing on, stuff like that. You put it together and you create a little junk journal, and then you can just open it somewhere and work on top of it, and you already have a background for your art journal page. Or you bind them together in like an harmonica, or what is it called, accordion book. And then these are, for instance, gel prints that I have, then the background, have used the background and stamped on it, and then added some lettering using my paint markers. And so this way you can use it as backgrounds for your art journals, or you can create little tags and use them as a background, and then work on it with whatever mixed media products you have and like to work with. So this is basically, and sometimes like this one, I really like this one. And this is actually a print that is built up with several layers of leftover paint from the plate. But I really like this, and I can totally see this framed and on my wall as it is. So that's what gel printing is. That's basically how you get started. And once you have started, then you can experiment and try more and more techniques. There are many videos, both on the Michael's YouTube channel regarding gel printing, as well as on the Gelli Arts YouTube channel. There are tons and tons of videos on there with a variety of techniques that you can check out. And so I hope I got you a little bit excited and enthusiastic to try gel printing, or maybe explore gel printing a little bit more. And I would love to see you again next month for another class on gel printing, and I can't remember what the technique was, but it is it's something specific. It's not a basics class, it's a little bit more advanced. So I would love to see you there. Thank you for being here today, and hopefully I see you again soon. Bye.